I'm 80 now. I don't have the energy to pretend anymore, and I don't have the time to keep guessing what people mean when they say things that don't sound like love. There are sentences your own children can say to you, and something inside you goes quiet in a way it never did before. Not anger, not even hurt at first, just a kind of stillness. I didn't notice it the first time. I told myself I was being sensitive. Old people do that, I thought. We take things the wrong way. But it kept happening. Not loudly, not all at once. Just little phrases. Casual, almost careless. And after each one, I found myself sitting alone a little longer than usual, looking at the same wall, thinking about things I hadn't thought about in years. At this age, you don't argue much. You listen, you measure, you remember, and sometimes you understand something too late. I wasn't always like this. In my 30s, I was busy. That's the word I used, busy. I worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. Not because I loved the work, I didn't, but it paid the bills, and it gave me something to point to when I felt unsure of myself. I'm doing this for them, I would say. My children were small then. I remember their voices more than their faces from that time. The way they used to call me from the other room. "Come see this. Look what I made." I would answer without looking up. "Just a minute." It was always a minute. I thought there would be more minutes. Their mother, she noticed things I didn't. She would tell me quietly, not in a way that accused me. "They waited for you today." I would nod, say I was tired. And I was tired, that part was true. But I was also somewhere else, always thinking about the next day, the next bill, the next problem. I believed that was responsibility. I believed that was love. The first time one of my children said something that stayed with me, I was already in my late 60s. We were sitting in their house, not mine, their house. I remember noticing that. They were talking about something. I don't even remember what. And I tried to add something, a small thing, just a thought. They looked at me and they said very plainly, "You don't understand how things work now." It wasn't said with anger. That's what made it stay. It was simple, dismissive, but not cruel. Just final. I nodded. I said nothing. But on the way home I kept hearing it again. "You don't understand." I wondered when that had become true. I wondered when I had stopped being someone they asked and become someone they corrected. There are other things. They don't come all at once. They arrive slowly, like small cracks in something you thought was solid. One day they say, "We didn't tell you because we knew you'd worry." And you realize you're no longer part of their decisions, not even the small ones. You sit there and you smile because what else do you do? But inside you're asking yourself when you became someone to be managed instead of included. Another time it was, "You've already done enough." That one sounds kind, doesn't it? It almost fooled me. But it didn't feel like kindness. It felt like a closing door. Like being told your part in their life is finished. There's nothing more expected of you, nothing more needed. I used to think being needed was a burden. When I was younger, I used to dream about the day things would be easier, quieter. But no one tells you what it feels like when that quiet finally comes. I remember one evening clearly. It was winter. I was sitting in my living room, the same chair I've had for years. The phone rang earlier that day, but it wasn't for me. It was a wrong number. I laughed about it at the time. But later, sitting there in the dark, I realized something. No one had called me on purpose in days, maybe longer. Time gets blurry when the days start to look the same. Another sentence. This one was softer, but it stayed just as long. We're really busy right now. That's a normal thing to say. I used to say it myself, over and over, to my own children. I didn't think it meant anything back then. It was just a fact. Life is busy. But now, hearing it from them, I understood something I hadn't understood before. Busy doesn't just describe your day. It decides who you make time for, and who you don't. There's one more. This one changed something in me. We'll visit when we can. Not when they will, when they can. I nodded again. I always nod. I become very good at that. But I went home and sat down, and I didn't turn on the lights. I just sat there. And I thought about all the times I said something similar. Not those exact words, but the same meaning. Later. Another time. Not now. You don't notice the cost when you're living your life forward. You only see it when you start looking backward. And by then, most of it is already decided. I didn't miss everything, that's important to say. I was there sometimes. Birthdays, some of them. A few school events. I remember one of them clearly. My child was on a stage, looking out into the crowd. I was late. I slipped into the back, trying not to be noticed. They saw me. I remember that part. The way their face changed for a second. Relief, maybe, or something like it. I told myself that was enough, that showing up, even late, still counted. Maybe it did. But maybe they remember the waiting more than the arrival. Their mother passed before me. That's usually how it goes. She was quieter than I was, but she understood things better. In the last months, she would sit with me and say very little. One day she said, "They needed you in ways you didn't see." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. Even now, I'm not sure I fully understand what she meant. Or maybe I do, and I just don't like the answer. The moment it became clear, there wasn't one big event, no argument, no final fight, just distance, polite distance, respectful even, but empty. I became someone they checked in on, not someone they turned to. There's a difference. A quiet one, but a real one. At 80, you don't have many illusions left. You start to see things as they are, not as you hoped they would be, not as you told yourself they were, just as they are. And sometimes what they are is this. Your children have lives that don't include you in any meaningful way. Not out of cruelty, not even out of intention. Just because that's how it unfolded. Because of 1,000 small moments. Because of things said and not said. Because of time. If they say, "You don't understand," if they say, "We didn't tell you," if they say, "You've already done enough," if they say, "We're busy," if they say, "We'll come when we can," if they say these things calmly, casually, without thought, you start to realize something. You are already halfway out of their lives. The leaving has already begun. You're just the last to admit it. I'm not saying you should be angry. I'm not angry. That part surprises people. But anger takes energy, and I don't have much of that left. What I have is clarity. Slow, quiet clarity. The kind that comes when there's nothing left to protect. If I could go back, I wouldn't change everything. Life isn't that simple. But I would notice more. I would stop more often. I would answer when they called from the other room, not later, not in a minute, right then. Because those minutes, they don't wait. They don't stack up for you to use later. They disappear. And one day you realize you've been living on what's left. I don't know how much time I have. At 80, you stop making long plans. You think in smaller pieces, days, weeks, maybe a season if you're feeling optimistic. I still sit in the same chair. The room is quiet most of the time. Sometimes I hear sounds from outside, people passing by, lives continuing. It's a strange thing to feel like you've stepped slightly outside of it, not completely gone, just less included. If you're listening to me, I'm not telling you what to do. I wouldn't know how. People live their lives the way they understand them at the time. I did. You will too. But maybe just notice the small things, the sentences that don't sound like much, the moments you think you can postpone. They don't announce themselves as important. They just pass. As for me, I don't call as often anymore. Not out of pride, just understanding. I've learned to recognize when a door is no longer meant to be opened the same way. I still care. That doesn't go away. But I've stepped back, quietly, the way these things happen. At 80, you learn how to leave without making noise. You learn how to take your place in the background of other people's lives. And you learn, eventually, to sit with that, not to fight it, not to fix it, just to see it clearly and let it be what it is. I don't know if that's wisdom. It doesn't feel like it. It just feels final. And at this age, final is something you come to recognize, even when no one says it out loud.